Gautrain Management Agency says there will be serious consequences for residents who damage the Gautrain infrastructure. This after Gautrain services between Park Station and Rosebank were affected when a private property owner drilled through the Gautrain tunnel, causing massive damage. Speaking during a site inspection of the vandalized area, Gauteng Transport MEC Kgobe Diale said there are bylaws that need to be adhered to before building on municipal infrastructure. Let's make sense of this now with the Gautrain Management Agency CEO, Kgobe, who joins us in studio. Tshepo, how severe is the damage that we're talking about here?
It is serious damage. It's the kind of damage that does not allow us to actually run trains at the current moment. We are clearing the muck of what came through the hole in itself. There was parts of, what do they call it, of the cable that we had just inspected now that had looked like it was going to be, have to be replaced. And this is fiber, and if you have to patch fiber or you have patch fiber, it takes some time. But lucky for us, it was just scarred rather than it being damaged completely. But this is a mission critical cable, so it carries the comms that ensure that our signaling functions properly and stops trains from colliding with each other.
Yeah. How many days have the trains been offline between Park Station and Rosebank, and when do you expect it to get back online?
So it's been since Saturday morning. So we discovered the hole, and so the initial leaking of the sand into the tunnel was discovered towards the end of shift on the Friday night. So we managed to finish off our service on Friday, and then we just completely cut off the service from Saturday morning.
Yeah. Has the resident in question been identified? Has the drilling operator in question been identified? Because they both, as an operator and as a resident, would have violated bylaws here.
Yes, they have been identified. We are clear. We went to site, to actual fact, the actual site where the drilling started. We actually made it there. And just like breadcrumbs, the muck that they had brought from the site had trailed back down the road. So when we were driving around looking for a place to see where they had drilled, we found the markings. You can actually see it on the screen at the current moment. So you actually are clear that they actually they knew what they were doing, and they were clear about what they were trying to do, and we actually caught them on the tracks, or well, they were found out.
Give us a sense of the financial losses here, both from the disruption in operations on the one hand, but as well as the contingencies that had to be put in place, for instance, the buses that are now ferrying passengers between the 2 points, and the repair costs on the other hand.
So the costs rack up quite badly. So to start with, the 2 days, about probably 20% of our ridership goes all the way to Park. So it goes past Rosebank all the way to Park. And with that kind of money, we haven't had any revenue in the 2 days. In addition to that, we put an additional bus service to be able to run on the outside. And it's not the same thing, the efficiencies of a train as compared to a number of buses. Because if you think about it, a 4-car
train... I use the train because I don't want to be in traffic in a bus.
But also, if you look at it, a 4-car train at full steam, it's carrying about 409 passengers. 409 passengers divided by 70, you are clear the number of buses that you need to be able to ferry one train.
It's at least 7 buses.
It's at least 7 buses up the road. And then that means, remember, our bus service, it's rated on the basis of its departure times. So every train that arrives has to have 7 buses accompanying it. And at some point in time, you probably have 21 buses on the road at the same time. And that means shortchanging a lot more stations to be able to have 21 buses moving up and down in that space.
How many buses do you have in inventory?
We have about 125 buses all in all. At any one point in time, we have about 100 deployed, and probably 10 in maintenance and 13 in spare.
Yeah. Has your financial director given you a sense of the cost here?
We are looking at it now because you have to count the revenue that has been lost. We have to count the alternative diesel that we're using and the labor that we're using to move people on the buses. In addition to that, then there's the repairs. That's the actual repairs, which is going to be a complicated repair. I've just been reading through, the proposed method of repair. We're using, because as you can see off the footage, there's still water coming out of the hole. So you have to use expensive polymers and additives to be able to allow the grout that we're going to pump in there to not fall out, and actually to plug the hole. which actually can work with us having water running through the place. Yes.
How many kilometers of tunnel do you have running through residential areas?
We've got the whole 15 kilometers runs through residential areas.
No, not just in Park and Rosebank, across the entire Gautrain infrastructure.
Yes, that's about 15
kilometers.
Yeah, that's about 15 kilometers. It goes under a lot of houses.
Yeah. Look, on the one hand, residents have to abide by the bylaws. That is to say, if you want to drill and search for a borehole, you have to apply for a permit to the relevant authority, in this instance to the City of Johannesburg. Yeah. And of course, there's a cost to not abiding by the bylaws. But does the Gautrain Management Agency now see a need to proactively go speak to the residents along that 15 kilometers worth of railway tunnel line to not do this, to inform them quite directly about the consequences, and that perhaps someone lives above a railway tunnel and they just don't know it, right? And so they might innocently go and drill, not adhering to the permitting.
There is no property owner that does not know about the railway line being below them. In actual fact, most of those houses, even if you tell me that by the time we built the tunnel and we expropriated the servitude underneath, then you were not living there and you bought the house. The house actually is designated to be sold with you knowing that those are some of the things that the person that sells the house to you has to declare. That you're sitting over what's called the exclusion zone of the tunnel, and therefore there is no construction that occurs here without you going to apply. So this is actually general delinquency, and even general lawlessness overall, because when you look at it, it's even if a person says, I didn't own the house in 2006, 2007 when you guys were building this tunnel, and actually I bought it from somebody else, the person who sold the house should have actually declared that you are sitting over the Gautrain servitude. So there is no property along that line that does not know that in actual fact where it sits.
You use the word delinquency. Are you going to pursue them criminally? Because you would have to recover costs, so there's a civil suit that is to happen on the one hand. But are you to sue them criminally?
No, the Gauteng Transport Infrastructure Act is very clear. Section 53, which talks about what happens when somebody does this, it's very clear about it. It's either you get a jail term or a fine or both. And Section 52 also speaks about the area where it says if you damage any of this, you could be liable for not only you going to jail and getting a fine, but also the damages and the repairs will be for your cost. So there is legal prescripts that we have to follow and actually follow through. And it is not even an option that we're not going to do it.
What's the highest fine that the Act imagines?
So in essence, remember, the biggest part is not the fines themselves. The biggest part is you paying for the damages. And this is going to rack up to millions of rands.
So the resident has to carry the cost of repairs, effectively?
They have to.
In the instance where they don't have the means to do so, what then is the alternative?
You will have to pursue them legally, and if what it means us having to look at what happens to the block of flats and they get sold, we will follow what the courts determine.
Yeah. Tshepo, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for coming, and really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Tshepo Kgobe is the CEO of the Gautrain Management Agency.